Yeah, so today, in today's installment of 10-minute history lessons, we're going to be talking about the composer Giuseppe Verdi. So Giuseppe Verdi was born in 1813 and he lived until 1901, and he was actually born in the same year as Richard Wagner, his German contemporary. So Wagner and Verdi both born 1813, and both best known for their operatic works. So Verdi wrote 29 operas, and outside of opera, his works are quite far and few in between. He wrote a string quartet, which is an amazing piece of work, and a requiem as well. The string quartet is the string quartet in E minor, which is a beautiful piece of music, and it just illustrates that he had the capability to write outside of opera, but he just focused mostly on opera. And this was the Italian style of opera, which was extremely popular at the time. We'll get more into that a bit later on. But he also wrote choral works and songs. So his best known operas is La Traviata, and I think from that everyone knows Brindisi. Bum 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 da 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 dun 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 da da da. You get the idea. So sorry for the hand gesture. And from and Aida is another favorite one, and the famous part from that is a triumphant march. Bum 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 ba da ba bum ba dum. Done, and Othello also very, very popular. So he was very loyal to his librettist. He kept on using the same librettists. I'll quickly mention them. It was Soma, Piave, Solera, Boito, and Camorano. And his early life, as we said, Italy at this stage. Well, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. He was born in what we today know as Italy, but then it was part of the French Empire. So he was born in Italy, but when it was ununified, so his father bought him a spinet at a young age because he realized his son's love for church music. And he kept this spinet up until death, until old age. So he was exposed to church music, and his father obviously saw that he obviously had a inclination towards music, and he already played organ in the church at age 10, and he actually got lessons from the village organist, from the church village organist. So his father was an innkeep, and he bought supplies from a man named Barezzi, and this guy was a prominent musical figure. He wasn't a composer himself, but he played instruments, and he was very prominent in the musical scene. And at age 17, Verdi went to stay with him, where he met Barezzi's daughter, and he actually ended up marrying her. And he wanted to study at the Milan Conservatory, but as I mentioned, Italy wasn't unified at this stage, so Milan was a foreign country, so they saw Verdi as a foreigner, and he was older than the usual student, so he was actually rejected. But then they organized for him to get lessons from a man named Lavigna, who was a most prominent composer in Milan at the time. So his second opera was King for a Day, and this had to be performed after his wife's death. Now, this is Barezzi's daughter. They had married, and then they had two kids who had died, and then after that his wife died, and he had to perform King for a Day. He had to conduct it himself, and he took on the full brunt of the angry audience. And after this he went into a big depression, and he almost gave up composing music. So just notable about Verdi is he's one of the composers who took some of his older and earlier works and actually revised them, improved them, and so forth. So he met a soprano named Giuseppina Strepponi, and she was a soprano of great renown. And they would later get married, but very later on. They would eventually move in together, but only get married very later on. And she had quite a reputation because she had a few illegitimate children and so forth. But Donizetti actually wrote the title role for Adelia, especially for Giuseppina Strepponi. Sorry, I keep on forgetting her name. And just I wanted to mention the strain that was on composers and musicians, and especially on opera, because opera was so popular. Everyone who was integrated in the opera scene, performance, production, was pushed to their limits. For instance, Giuseppina Strepponi started losing her voice at age 27, and she was basically retired by age 31. And she continued to give singing lessons and so forth. But for example, Donizetti, so he wrote Adalia is one of his most famous operas, and he wrote the role especially for her. Donizetti ended up going mad completely, and he died at a madhouse. Rossini, another famous composer, Italian also of the time. He stopped composing at age 37, but he continued living for another 39 years. So he only composed for half of his life, and obviously he was a baby during a part of that as well. And Bellini also died at a very young age. It was due to disease, but obviously contributed to the strain put on them. For instance, if you think about Mozart as well, like the strain put on him touring as a child, you know, your health really takes a turn for the worse. But Verdi is the one composer who actually stood the test of time, and he continued composing till the end of his life. The quantity of work went down, but the quality kept on improving, and he constantly basically outdid himself. And many disapproved of the relationship he had with Giuseppina Strepponi, but and it often held Verdi back in some degrees. In some towns, they would really not be able to settle, really. Sorry, I'm actually receiving a call now, so I can see my phone ringing now, so I'm going to have to finish this one up, quite finished, because it's work. Yeah, sorry about that. I actually got a call from work, and it cut out the recording. I have Truecaller, and it gave me a notification, and the video just stopped recording. But I'll just continue where I think it cut out. I'm going to speak about La Traviata now a bit. So I'm just going to play you because I sung it a bit earlier, but it was terrible. I'm not a singer. So this is Brindisi from La Traviata, sung by Pavarotti. So I'm sure everyone knows this. And so I'll just continue talking while this is going on. So this is known as a drinking song, and it rarely fails to cast its spell. I think everyone knows this, and it really has a, you can't, I think if you're an opera singer and you sing this, it's difficult not to have a smile on your face. And it's based on a play by Alexander Dumas called The Lady of the Camellias. I hope I'm pronouncing it that right. Okay. So I hope you caught that. I'll play you one from the Triumphal March next. So I'm going to quickly talk about Aida. So it's based on Egyptian themes, and it was composed in only 4 months. And let me just quickly search here for the Triumphal March. So the Triumphal March is the most famous piece from Aida. There we go. First result on YouTube as well. So, and it was commissioned for the official opening of the Suez Canal, and it was written for a soprano named Teresa Stolz. So, yeah, let me just quickly play you. Yeah, and another one of his, so, yeah, that's Aida. And I'll just end off with Aida playing, the Triumphal March playing in the background. So Verdi saw Wagner as well. They were basically contemporaries. I'm just going to say a quote that Verdi said about Wagner. He invariably chooses unnecessarily the untrodden path. I wrote terribly here. I can't even read my own handwriting. But he says, he invariably chooses unnecessarily the untrodden path of where and tempts. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry about that. He invariably chooses unnecessarily the untrodden path of tempting to fly where a rational person would walk with much better results. So I'll just read that one more time. He invariably chooses unnecessarily the untrodden path to attempt to fly where a rational person would walk with better results. So just a comparison of their two works. Like Verdi's work is focused on melody and strong melodies, strong vocal lines, strong singers, where Wagner's work is the singers just play a part in the musical whole, and Wagner's work has a lot of dissonances, and it's not melodic. They had two completely different trains of thoughts. Verdi had real characters, where Wagner, with the exception of Meistersangers, focused mostly on mythological figures. And so Verdi established a home for retired musicians. So this links back to Donizetti in the Madhouse, Rossini retiring, Ernie Josefina losing her voice, where he had obviously sympathy for other musicians, and he established this rest home for retired musicians. And he was actually after his death, he was first buried someplace, and then he was moved after a few months. He was moved to the crypt of this retirement home, and his funeral in 1901 is still today the largest public gathering in the history of Italy. So I just thought that was very interesting. And his Requiem, which I mentioned earlier, just serves as a testimony to his capabilities outside of the operatic genre. And this was actually composed in honor of Alessandro Manzoni. Hope I've got that right. And operas performed, and his operas are still basically performed today more than anyone else's is. So as you can probably hear his music, you've probably heard this before. Let me just play that part again. And another famous work obviously is from Nabucco, the Hebrew Slaves Chorus, and this was actually used as like an anthem, hymn to freedom, or an anthem of freedom during conflicts in Italy at the time. Cool. So we'll just end it there. And yeah, I just thought it was interesting just to mention Verdi. I like the fact that he revised some of his work. I think any musician likes to look back and think, oh, I could have done that better. And just to be able to go back and actually improve it, I think just goes to say, yeah, I'm not perfect. I could have done this a bit better, so let me do it a bit better. And yeah, the loyalty to the librettists, and contemporary of Wagner, but completely different trains of thought. Wagner, German, and today obviously we regard Verdi as Italian, although he was born in what was then actually a part of the French Empire. Cool, so we'll catch up again later. Sorry for having to cut that one in the middle. I'm going to have to call back now. It was work, yeah, so, but I'm like, I have the morning off. Maybe you've noticed it's like a ton of natural light and stuff, so like I don't have the entire morning off, but it's like, what's the time now? It's 9 and I need to leave at 10. So I think it's just probably, yeah, let me not expand on work stuff. That's not really, yeah, cool. So we'll catch up again. Thanks for listening.